Good morning, everyone. I'd like to officially welcome you to the New England States Virtual Public Involvement Virtual Peer Exchange. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think we have some good numbers in the room, and hopefully it'll mean for some really great discussion. My name is Lana Lau. I'm an environmental protection specialist in the Federal Highway Administration Headquarters Office of Project Development and Environmental Review. One of my main program areas as the co-lead of the EDC 6 Virtual Public Involvement Initiative is, of course, Virtual Public Involvement, VPI. I also work on planning and environment linkages. So we're going to just do a very brief introduction of some of the folks that you may want to keep in mind. If you're experiencing any technical difficulties or have questions about the sort of running of the peer exchange, so Mac Frost is also in the Federal Highways Headquarters office. Mac, if you'd like to turn on your camera and unmute yourself and give a brief introduction.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. My name again is Mac Frost. I'm with the Federal Highway Administration Office of Planning as a transportation specialist. Planning and environmental linkage is one of my main program areas, but I'm also with the virtual public involvement and assistance with Jill Stark, as well as others from our team, including Lana. But I'm happy to be here today. Happy to be sharing with you all today.
Thanks, Mac. Also, we have two people, actually three, I think Kevin's here as well, from the US DOT Volpe Center, and Federal Highway Administration really wouldn't be able to assist with events like this without their support. So from the Volpe Center, we have Jacob Korn, Larissa Ireland, and Kevin McCoy. So starting with Jacob, if you'd just like to turn on your camera and say hello.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Lana. My name is Jacob Korn, and I'm a policy analyst here at the Volpe Center, which is based up in Cambridge, so up in the New England area. And we are here just kind of supporting federal highways with this workshop. So if you have any kind of technical issues throughout, please put something in the chat or directly message Larissa, Kevin, or I, and we'll do our best to help you out. Larissa, if you want to say a few words.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. My name is Larissa. I'm also a policy analyst with the Volpe Center. And yeah, just to echo what Jacob said, if you have any technical difficulties or questions, just send either of us a message or Kevin as well, or send us an email directly. And Kevin, you can go.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, Kevin McCoy with the US DOT Volpe Center. I'm a community planner there. We've been supporting federal highways with the VPI initiative for about 3 years now. So really excited to hear the discussion and the presentations during this workshop. Thanks everyone for attending.
Great, thank you. So in terms of our state DOT partners and participants, they will do some introductions later on during the state DOT roundtable, but I just wanted to really thank Scott Rollins and Derek Havat and other folks from the peer exchange planning team that for the past 2 years, really, believe it or not, we've been planning this peer exchange in various formats for 2 years. Originally, it was meant for an in-person peer exchange, but now that it's been almost 2 years, we all decided it was time and that we could do it as a virtual peer exchange and do it well. And so here we are. But I'd like to now ask, we have a couple of special guests here who'd like to make some opening remarks. The first of whom is Nina Fisher, who is Maine DOT's Deputy Commissioner. She was appointed to that position in February 2019. She oversees policy and communication matters and has more than 20 years of experience working with local, state, and federal lawmakers. Nina, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you folks this morning. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, great. I think this peer exchange is going to be very different for the Maine DOT team members this summer than it would have been back in March of 2020. 16 months ago, we were just testing the waters of virtual public involvement, and the pandemic snuck up behind us and pushed us into the deep end of the pool. This unprecedented period has shown us what we can accomplish without being physically together. In the early days of the pandemic, we pivoted to business unusual at Maine DOT, and that term indicated that we had to keep doing our work while acknowledging that everything was going to be different. Our team rose to meet the challenge. Despite the need to adapt to dynamic protocols to ensure health and safety, We advertised our 2020 capital projects to bid at an on-time delivery rate of 94%. It was a department record that contributed to the growth of construction jobs in Maine during the pandemic months. We're one of only a few states where that occurred, and we're very proud of that. We're also proud of how our virtual public involvement program has taken off. Our first VPI project went live a little bit more than 1 year ago. Since then, we've held virtual meetings for more than 50 projects. We've received hundreds of comments and engaged with thousands of stakeholders. Our team is also effectively using social media to amplify this new type of engagement. While many of our team members have helped to get this project off the ground, as you mentioned, Scott Rollins from our Bureau of Project Development has been key in making this a success. Thank you, Scott. VPI is part of our new normal. Gone are the days when project managers would have to spend hours in the car to hold a public meeting for a handful of people who could attend on a weekday evening. This new format meets our customers when and where it is convenient for them. It also cuts down the costs associated with in-person public meetings and brings along environmental benefits. In-person interactions can certainly be important, and in-person meetings will still happen on some projects, but we now know how powerful and helpful these new virtual tools can be. Because of Maine DOT's experience with virtual public involvement so far, this truly will be more of an exchange for us. We look forward to sharing what we've learned since last spring and hearing about successes beyond our state borders. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. I also would like to welcome Andrea D'amato, who is the Assistant Secretary for Operational Excellence at Massachusetts DOT. She primarily focuses on improving operational performance among and between the highway, transit, and registry departments for the Commonwealth. Andrea has been leading the coordination of virtual public involvement activities at MassDOT across all divisions and offices, and she also serves on behalf of the National Academies of Science, the Transportation Research Board, as chair of the Strategic Management Committee. Andrea, welcome.
Thank you, Lana. So thank you especially for the invitation to join this peer exchange. I find that peer exchanges are incredibly important for people in our positions to understand what each other is doing and to learn from each other along the way. So a big shout out to Federal Highways and to Volpe for actually bringing this, and Maine DOT for instigating this whole process and bringing us all together. As we know, and you all have experienced, VPI is now more important than ever. Since COVID happened. And similar to all of you, we have found that once those pandemic-related restrictions went into place in March of 2020, we began to move everything to virtual. And similar to Maine, during this time in Massachusetts, we did not stop planning, designing, or constructing our projects. We took full advantage of the low traffic volumes and the low ridership to advance our capital and our operating program. So there really was no choice but to go fully virtual. And like many of you, we found that holding virtual meetings not only increased attendance, but enabled us to reach more diverse audiences, and largely due to the time and ease of attending meetings. What I want to offer is a few opening comments related to our journey in Massachusetts over the past 16 months, and I'm sure you'll have similar experiences, and I look forward to hearing the conversation on this. But first off, at MassDOT and the MBTA, our goal has always been to deliver very engaging and interactive public meetings across all phases of the project. And you know, in all phases, you have different audiences participating from planning to design and through construction. We also believe it's incredibly important that we provide a consistent experience for the public across all modes. The public is modally agnostic. And this is especially important in the virtual world, as the act of attending a virtual meeting using virtual tools is completely different than walking into a physical space. So pre-pandemic world, I'd say that for most of our projects, not our large complex projects and not our really large intermodal projects, most of our approach to public engagement was pretty recipe driven. We had checklists, we went in, we had things we had to do. We get the stenographer in, we check the box, we do the comments, we get on, we move to the next phase. Our attendance was declining pre-pandemic. When we went virtual, we actually focused on two things. The first one was striving to become more uniform across all the modes and all the geographies in how we delivered our meetings. And secondly, accessibility was a big focus. So our first step was to coordinate and collaborate across all the modes and agencies and align our practice in actually producing events. Yeah, we actually did events, board meetings, project meetings, and hearings from our RMV, which is your DMV, to transit to highway, even micromobility with the rise of bicycle use. We really were trying to make sure they were as engaged as everybody else. And then secondly, what we did is we started focusing on accessibility. I will say that we have, and we're proud of our ability and the tools that we use for Title VI and ADA accessibility things. We had that down. We have a great tool, Engage, that helps people identify what's going on and where to go and how to meet. We had that down, but we soon realized in March and April that accessibility to our meetings required a broader definition. We needed to really reach the underserved populations, often overlooked and often having limited access to our project meetings. So we started re-examining and redefining what barriers to participation for our projects existed. So we started with the challenges of ADA and Title VI, of language, hearing, mobility, time, all those kind of things. And then we expanded that to look at other issues such as technology, right? Who has broadband, what kind of devices people are using, and the cost of using those devices. We looked at cultural barriers. We looked at literacy, time, again, a big one. And the other one that was really interesting is fundamental lack of interest, where we're actually reaching and communicating effectively with our populations. And candidly, a lot of our meetings are pretty boring. So we needed to rethink our game and how we presented our meetings. So throughout the pandemic, we actually felt we really moved to lower that bar for engagement and to start to really get more participation for traditionally unrepresented groups. And some techniques we used, and some you're going to hear everybody's been using, which is awesome, is to meet people where they were. And that meant finding a common platform. And for us, that was Zoom. We had to make the extra effort to make sure language interpretation was provided, whether or not it was requested. Certainly for our hearings, we do a lot of research. We find out who's there, and we don't even ask. It's like, we're going to provide those interpretations. Wider adoption and use of our Engage tool, and Derek will probably talk about it, but we use that for outreach, and we're going to use that for in-person again. We always use CC, closed captioning, unless we have a CART request. And this is one of the biggest issues, is that these services are in high demand. And we have advanced our planning for meetings so we can actually secure these resources. We spent a lot of time refining our message and our methods of communicating projects, and that's what needed the most work. And the other thing, and the last thing, is we actively track our performance in terms of outreach and engagement with every person that we touch. So I think that we soon found out through all the work we've been doing over the last 14, 16 months that our using public virtual tools and engaging the public virtually allowed us actually to be more strategic. And it kept helping us continue to ramp up our game. So when the state of emergency did go into place, we immediately formed a committee that is still operating. And that committee meets every Wednesday morning at 8 o'clock and has been throughout the pandemic. And basically that committee is organized to develop tools for project managers on how to engage outreach and increase participation using virtual tools. The committee continues to be supported by accessibility subject matter experts from the Office of System-Wide Accessibility, the T, IT, the Office of Diversity and Civil Rights, the Mass Office on Disability, the Mass Executive Office on Technology Services and Security. We've made a persistent focus on Title VI and ADA, and we're actually continuing now to actually develop better tools at reaching and identifying the underserved. So our journey actually started and continues to evolve based on research. And Lana stated that I'm very active in TRB, and so I have a great deal of resources available to me with the Transportation Research Board. But this is a very data-driven process, which is why we're really keenly focused on monitoring our performance and using metrics. And we also do a lot of best practice sharing. And so I want to identify 5 quick points. First of all, our approach is fundamentally rooted in engaging our partners dynamically. The state can do great work on a statewide geography, but locally, boots on the ground, we need those partnerships, whether that's government, MPO, consultants, we need that dynamic partnership. And with them, they have been part of everything we've done, including training materials, best practice exchanges, and that interaction is critically important for us to deliver really effective engagement. The second thing is we have a direct relationship with Zoom, the development team, and Zoom. And we have specifically developed that relation for the purpose of bringing accessibility challenges to their attention and to collaborate on testing various fixes to overcome the challenges. I'm sure you all have stories to tell about your Zoom experience. We have had very good ones and we have had very bad ones. And as soon as we have a bad one, they sit down at the table with us, which is really helpful. We're also working with them to improve the multilingual audio channels that Zoom is developing. We've actually morphed to webinar because their ability to host interpreters is phenomenal. The third area is the training models that we developed. We have 2 series. We just launched our 200 series, platforms, tools, and techniques for staff and our partners. But the earlier training, the 100 series, focused on the fundamentals of conducting virtual meetings, the legal obligations, the civil rights requirements, troubleshooting, tools and techniques for engaging people. The 200 series is completely focused on the platforms and the tools, which is really great for producers. So that's been fantastic. We have both available and we're willing to share all of this with all of you. Love to have your feedback on everything. And the fourth thing we did is we decided it made a lot more sense from a cost point of view to start training our own staff. And so we actually brought in and started training facilitators and producers in a pilot program to support our project managers in holding virtual public meetings as a permanent part of our business practice. That allows our consultants to provide us with the creative talents and skills that we need them to do rather than administering our projects. And so we have a pilot project up and running, which has been very helpful. And as a result of that, we're getting a lot of feedback from our own staff. And we're modifying our guidance accordingly as technologies and their experience warrant. And finally, we're actually internally reviewing our guidance on hybrid meetings. And that's been a real eye-opener because I looked all over, and thank you, Federal Highways, for helping me with this. We did a little search all over who's actually really doing hybrid meetings and what does that mean? And we were surprised at how difficult it will be to go back in person because of the concerns on safety and people's health. And we need to be especially respectful of that. So I look forward to participating with all of you over the next 4 weeks and learning how we can move this needle further to effectively remove all those barriers to inclusion and participation. Wouldn't it be lovely to live in a world where we don't have to ask you what you need, that it just gets delivered? That is our goal, and we hope we're able to realize that. As we no longer operate the way we used to, and nor should we ever, based on our great successes, this is actually the time to move together collectively into a better and more equitable world. And again, I thank a big thanks to VPI and Federal Highways and all of you for participating in this and taking the time over the next 4 weeks to provide your lessons learned, your best practices, and to learn from each other. Thanks again for the opportunity.
Thank you so much, Andrea. So before we roll into Mac's talk about some general virtual public involvement overview, I guess I just wanted to do a couple of housekeeping items. For those of you who arrived before 9 o'clock, you may have had the chance already to check that your microphone is working and that you can also turn on your camera. But in general, please, unless you're speaking, try to keep your microphone on mute. And, whatever you're comfortable with, if you prefer to keep your camera off until you are speaking, you can do that as well. But I would like to suggest, just so that we have a more sort of connected, engaged experience, that if you are speaking, and I encourage you to speak rather than to just use the chat pod, to unmute yourself and turn on your camera so we can see who's speaking. So that's item number 1. The second is, if you haven't already put your name, your agency, and your job position into the chat pod, please do so. That is in lieu of sort of going around with all our participants just to do introductions, because we're really trying to pack in a lot of information and discussions into these sessions. If you've had access to or taken a look at our agenda, we're spacing this peer exchange across 4 weeks. Just a note that there is a gap of 1 week in between weeks 3 and 4. So we're actually 4 sessions spaced over the course of 5 weeks. And so it will be morning sessions on Tuesdays. And so, as I said, we're trying to fit a lot into the 3 hours or so that we have together on each of those days. We're going to be talking about best practices for public meetings, how to do do-it-yourself videos using project visualizations. And as Andrea was talking about, if you and your agency have the goal of institutionalizing virtual public involvement as a permanent part of your business practices, we're going to have a great discussion about that on the 4th and final session of this peer exchange. And so I'm so excited that you're all here. Really glad that we were able to bring you all together in this way, maybe in a way that wouldn't have been possible if we had gone in person, with travel restrictions and the costs and budgets and things like that. So we're very happy to be able to open this event up to the state DOT's local partners, the MPOs, RPOs, and the COGs. We're just really glad you're here. And no matter where you and your agency are right now, we would really love to have you share about your experiences, what has been your evolution in terms of the use of VPI, and hopefully that we can all learn from one another throughout the course of this peer exchange. So those are sort of a couple of housekeeping items. The other thing is, I just wanted to remind everyone that we are recording these sessions. So, if you unmute yourself, turn on your camera, that's your acknowledgement that you're okay with being recorded in that way. This is really important because even though we try our best to accommodate schedules, not everybody who wanted to participate could. We did have to put a cap on the number of participants just because we know that there's a lot of interest, but we wanted to make sure that we kept the numbers to a manageable number so that we could have meaningful discussions. And if we have a peer exchange with 500 or 600 people, it's kind of hard to have those types of discussions. Also, when we have the day talking about do-it-yourself videos, we're going to have some interactive activities where we'll be going to breakout rooms. And so that is also something that we needed to keep the numbers smaller on. So all that to say, these recordings that we will eventually put onto the FHWA Virtual Public Involvement website will be resources both for you, afterwards to refer back to things, but also for those who were not able to participate or from other states who may be interested in the topics that we're talking about. So we will have recordings made available. There will also be a summary report coming out of this peer exchange that will be helping us put together. That will also be going up on the FHWA VPI website. And if you haven't been to that webpage, if Mac or Jacob could pop the link into the chat pod there. If you haven't been to our VPI website, I encourage you to make a visit. We do have a lot of resources on there already. And Mac will talk about that a little bit more in his presentation. But finally, before we get to the main part of our agenda today, I'd like to point out some of the features of Microsoft Teams if you are not familiar with Teams. So, up at the top of your Teams window, there is an icon with sort of 2 people. So that's for you to see who's in the room, who's attending. There's also a little chat bubble, so that brings up the chat pod. You can type stuff into the chat pod. But next to that, there's a little smiley face with a hand. And so those are your sort of engagement buttons. So if you wanted to raise your hand, if you're very polite in that way and wanted to raise your hand so that we can call to you, if you wanted to unmute and speak and contribute to the conversation, there's a raise your hand button there. And so if you raise your hand, you can also go back in and put your hand down. So if you wanted to give that a try right now, go ahead and raise your hand. Okay, thanks, Jeff. That was quick. So yes, go ahead and give that a try. Raise your hand, lower your hand. While you're doing that, also, sometimes, if you don't want to unmute yourself just to let us hear you laughing at something funny we said, there is a laugh reaction button. There's applause. We love getting applause. And, heart and like. So, those things, sometimes it's just nice to see, rather than just seeing some blank icons, just to see what you're thinking or feeling. So feel free to use those as well. And then now, unless there are any questions about the flow of the meeting, I'd like to turn things over to Mac, and Mac will talk about so the Federal Highway Administration's we have 8 buckets or 8 categories of virtual public involvement tools and strategies, and so Mac will talk about that. But also, we really want to emphasize, I think also as Andrea and mentioned earlier, that virtual public involvement is one tool in our overall toolkit that it will never replace in-person events. There will always be people who prefer to or need to meet with us in person. And certainly, if given the opportunity, even though I feel like I have met Scott and Derek and Catherine and Haley in person, we haven't yet. So given the opportunity, I would certainly love to. So there really is no real substitute, but we do have all these tools at our disposal to enhance and make our overall public involvement efforts better. So without further ado, I'll turn things over to Mac. Thank you, Mac.
Thank you, Lana. Appreciate it. Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Mac Frost, Federal Highway Administration, Office of Planning. And Jacob, do you have the slides, or should I share the ones I have? Got them? Thank you. All right, so again, everyone, my name is Mac Frost, and really here today, I just wanted to briefly highlight virtual public involvement. Lana's done a great job of kind of introducing the topic and some of who our speakers are, but really the first few slides today, we just want to get into some of the techniques and tools that we kind of highlighted that we have at our disposal, or that the DOTs and NPOs have at their disposal in terms of virtual public involvement, maybe a few of the challenges we've seen, but really just to really orient you to some of the background and information related to virtual public involvement. Go to the next slide. All right, so we all know public involvement is a critical component of project delivery, and really we want to highlight the importance of public involvement. So we know that the public oftentimes has useful opinions, insights, observations that they may be aware of within the local area, and they may be aware of some of the needs for the transportation system, and maybe even some of the design of specific projects. But we never know that unless we ask, and that's the big component of public involvement, public outreach. Strong and early public engagement has the potential to accelerate project delivery. So as the picture kind of highlights, we've seen sometimes perspective matters. We may see the picture on the left and think our room is full, that we've got a full, inclusive, diverse group of the public who's interested in the project, but then you turn around and look at it from the public's perspective on the picture on the right, and you see maybe we didn't conduct enough outreach. Maybe the right people weren't involved in the project or in the public involvement outreach, and they didn't show up to the meeting for whatever reason. And sometimes traditional public meetings don't live up to the potential. And that's really what I want to highlight here today, is that we know that public involvement is critical, and we have different avenues, tools, and techniques to increase the engagement. Next. So we want to highlight a few how the virtual public involvement technology is able to expand our outreach. So really virtual public involvement, again, is the use of digital technology to engage individuals to visualize projects and plans. So, we have to start orient ourselves with kind of essentially how we define virtual public involvement, and that allow us to move forward and kind of understand how we're able to visualize projects and plans as we move forward through transportation decision making. So just highlighting a few of the virtual public involvement tools. Some of these predate COVID, the pandemic. Some of these tools were in use during the pandemic, and we've also seen some tools started to emerge and be used more efficiently as we continue to move forward throughout this year. But a few of them have to do, you all may be aware or view some of these yourself, but mobile applications. We have project visualizations, and we'll get into some detail in the further slides on these. And again, as we continue to move forward throughout the peer exchange, we're going to get into a lot of detail on each of these tools individually. But we have do-it-yourself videos. We have crowdsourcing tools that are able to conduct virtual public involvement. Online mapping tools have been very big within the last couple of years. All-in-one digital tools, as well as digital tools that are able to enhance the in-person aspect of virtual public involvement. And I think, as in the earlier video that we may have shared with you all before this workshop, one of the key takeaways I heard is, the best public involvement will take the best of both worlds, both that in-person component as well as that virtual component. Next. So a quick example. So we have DOT, mobile applications. These users are able to obtain information or submit their own information through text, images, or other multimedia messages. We have a specific example here of a DOT app that provides geolocation services that are able to tie comments to specific locations and based on that input. And really, what's the benefit is, this can have a greater, wider reach to more people in the public than traditional media would afford you. Next. So again, we have a mobile application that we're kind of highlighting, the Northern Chicago Comprehensive Plan. Essentially, some of the same technology allowing the public to provide comments, messages, and information on specific within the specific jurisdiction area and tie that to a specific location, whether it be a project or the plan. Next. So project visualizations. We have an example here from Washington State, and it shows how visualizations help to support DOT's implementation of projects. So combining of 3D modeling, videos, photos, animations can be used to provide public with a better sense of what a proposed project looks like or what a proposed project seeks to accomplish. I think in this example, this was a diverging diamond, and some projects, the public may not be aware of how the design of road projects are intended to work. I know divergent diamonds, relatively new concept, within the last 10 to 20 years, I think. But we've seen them come up more often in design plans. And when these projects go out to the public, they may not be aware of how this design works. And so here's an example from Washington State DOT where they use a visualization technique. It's an animation that runs to show the flow of traffic for how divergent diamond works. So this is just another tool, another virtual public involvement tool that is at your disposal to allow the public to see, to visualize how these projects are designed. Important benefit is that this reduces project delays as the public has a clearer understanding of what the actual project and design is. It could prevent future comments coming in from the public who may not be aware of how these designs or how these projects move the flow of traffic. Next. So again, we have another project visualization technique here, courtesy of the Federal Highway Administration. Just another example of showing the public visually how the projects are intended to be designed, which again increases public engagement and hopefully reduces the delay from potential comments that may come in from the public who may not be aware of how these projects move the flow of traffic. We also have do-it-yourself videos. So, you know, today's tablets, we have phones, they make it very much easier to create high quality live recorded do-it-yourself videos. And so these brief videos, again, the goal is to inform the public. So these brief videos inform the public, they gather input, they're low budget production, they're often, like again, like we stated, they're self-produced on mobile phones, they can efficiently communicate content to a diverse group of audiences. And again, they can incorporate visualization techniques or other digital content. And specifically regarding this example from Utah DOT, this is a great overview of how do-it-yourself videos fit into overall public engagement and public involvement techniques. And specifically for this example, you know, this is an example that was actually used in construction. So they were able to talk about how the tools and the in-person component will always be balanced with virtual public involvement. And these do-it-yourself videos are one of the tools or techniques that can help the public understand how these projects are actually constructed. So we also have crowdsourcing tools. So just maybe to highlight, you know, the ability to gather and accumulate quantitative information from stakeholders. So these stakeholders can interact with one or another's ideas and submissions through a voting system or some type of rating system. And really the crowdsourcing, it provides a forum for others or the public to assess the value of the suggestions that come in from the crowdsourcing. So again, it's very effective at generating input. This can be paired again with photos, videos, maps, and other media to help with the crowdsourcing of information. And again, this is straightforward. It could be a straightforward online chat service that allow more robust platforms. And again, as we kind of stated, you know, allows for a voting or rating system for the public to actually vote or rate on specific improvements. But it's a good overall way, again, of crowdsourcing, gathering a great deal or variety of information and data to convey to our stakeholders. Next. So this is an example of the Connecticut Department of Transportation, their Let's Go. It's an interactive social media platform that allows the public a community conversation about long-range transportation planning within the state. So the site uses informal surveys that prompt creative, thoughtful responses and ideas from participants. And again, this platform encourages residents to stay engaged. That's the key, staying engaged after public meetings. So we have virtual town halls. I know we've seen virtual town halls, even really pre-pandemic. You know, stakeholders are able to participate online or by telephone. They're really accessible to participants and stakeholders who are unable to participate by in-person aspect. It increases the engagement during live meetings. It's a low-tech alternative that does not require internet access because, again, participants are able to use telephone to phone in for some of these. And again, who are we conducting outreach to? This method can reach environmental justice population, limited English proficiency, LEP, as well as other populations with simulcasts. Just provide an example of a virtual town hall. So this is an example in the San Francisco Municipal Transportation Agency. So they use a virtual town hall meeting to discuss their fiscal year budgets. And the online meeting helps to improve participation. And again, it elicits useful project feedback. We have online mapping tools. So again, some of these online mapping tools, these are web-based platforms. They display information familiar within a map format. Stakeholders are again able to provide comments, input on digital maps, again, tying those comments to geographic context or geographic location. The project information is less abstract. And this can be paired also with narratives, videos, and other digital format. So you see a lot of the tools that we've kind of discussed, cross blend, you know, essentially with some of the digital online mapping with a little bit of some of the maps, similar functionality. But again, key benefit that we're discussing is that it saves time and labor as it relates to project involvement or public involvement. So again, one of our online mapping tools, this is an example that we have courtesy of Alamo Area MPO. And the Alamo Area MPO uses live polling software that is able to engage with participants at public meetings. So they collect, display responses to questions in real time. So we have participants that are both in person as well as remote, and they can easily, access the polling tool on their mobile phones, their computers. They can share their opinions about the topics at hand. And the NPO also makes sure to have tablets available for those who participate who don't have access to mobile phones. So again, these tablets are used to collect feedback from the public and within the field. And they're able to bring project plans directly to the community using some of these digital tools. Next. Again, we have another example of online mapping sources from the Utah DOT, similar format, similar function, where through a GIS interface, the project is being able to be overlaid within the region, and comments are able to come in specifically tagged or geolocated to the specific area of the project. Again, a drill into some more detail in that Utah DOT example, and then we have all-in-one tools. So these all-in-one tools combine crowdsourcing, mapping, survey functions. It allows the staff to inform the public about a project, engage stakeholders. And this is, again, kind of blending to, my previous slide where we talked about the combination of these desktop platforms as well as mobile apps that are able to be used in combination. They're easy to manage project information based on the public involvement that comes in related to the specific issue or the project that you're having in front of the public. And again, big benefit that we are able to increase public engagement and increase public participation by removing barriers to involvement. Next. So we have an example of an all-in-one tool. I think this all-in-one tool is also highlighted within the video that we shared earlier. So this is from North Carolina DOT. They use a popular all-in-one tool as part of their public involvement process for their STIP. The straightforward interactive page is boosted public involvement by 19 times, allowing individuals across the state to become involved with outreach efforts. So this image here shows an example of one of the home pages for their divisions 5 and 6, which are located within the southeast part of the state. So really I guess the benefit that NCDOT found was that using these all-in-one tools significantly increased the number of participants that provide input for projects, and that many barriers to that participation disappeared. Just really using that all-in-one approach. So participants were better able to understand their projects. They're better able to participate when it's convenient for them to do so. And they were able to provide more detailed feedback just because they had a clearer understanding of the actual project. So, and also one of the bigger, I guess, feedback or positives that NCDOT found was that this approach also increased engagement among younger citizens. So we're talking about ages 26 to 40, who are often most underrepresented throughout the planning process. So again, we talk about increasing engagement, but also bringing those to the decision-making process who may be unrepresented, and it oftentimes can be younger citizens. Thanks. So again, we have another highlight about all-in-one tool. So this is courtesy again of NCDOT, just to get into a few more details specifically on one of their projects, Kingston Bypass. We also have digital tools that are able to enhance in-person events. So, we kind of went over this a little bit, the fact that, Lana kind of said that we really will never totally remove the in-person component of public involvement, but we have digital tools that are able to enhance these in-person events. So they're able to add value to our traditional public engagement techniques. So we're able to have, essentially have we shown here, the live polling that allows responses to be elicited from the public. We have tech-equipped street teams. We're able to bring project plans directly into the community. We're significantly improving the quality of engagement by having these digital tools at the in-person event. And really, again, we're bridging the digital divide to help those underserved populations who may not be aware or may not be as tech savvy. When they're at the in-person event, they're able to utilize some of these digital tools. I think we have an example. Yeah, again, so Alamo area MPO using the live polling software with participants at public meetings are able to collect information and share those opinion and responses regarding the feedback that they're able to receive from the public. So we want to highlight a few virtual public involvement fact sheets, and my last slide has a link to it, so you can actually see the specific fact sheets, but they're on our virtual public involvement, the Federal Highways virtual public involvement website. So we have fact sheets that cover the majority of the topics I discussed here today, and they will also be discussed in length within our presentations from our DOTs and NPOs. But project visualizations, again, are all-in-one tools, the do-it-yourself videos, as well as the virtual town halls. These fact sheets are great. They're awesome information. They link you directly to some of these projects and these plans, the DOT, so you're able to obtain additional information if you all see that you all want to implement some of these tools. I think that's the end. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out again to myself, Mac Frost, we have Lana Lau here, and as also we have the website for our Federal Highway Virtual Public Involvement website, which includes those fact sheets.
Great, thank you so much, Matt.